Hi everyone, welcome back to Infinite Scroll. So this week's vibe is totally different. This week's episode, I am doing a Q&A for you guys instead of a typical deep dive. So Jordy and I would do Q&As usually at least once a season when we co-hosted the podcast together. Obviously now the podcast is so different. The vibe has changed a lot. It's much more, of a scripted video essay for Infinite Scroll. So it kind of felt off-brand to continue that tradition. However, we have a lot of new listeners and a lot of new subscribers on YouTube. So a lot of you guys have some questions for me. You want to know a little bit more about me. And I have literally the busiest next 2 weeks ever. There's so much stuff that we have to get done for different clients. And we have South by Southwest next week. This will go live on Friday. So yeah, the coming week is South by Southwest. And we are doing a lot of stuff there. I'm also speaking on 2 panels there. So the week is a bit of a write-off in terms of prepping a deep dive. So I needed something that was going to be low prep to bring you guys this week. And I could have just done no episode, but obviously I just took 2 weeks off for Europe. I didn't want to have no content. I didn't want to keep having no content. So here we are. And I have a Q&A for you guys. But as always, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Please sign up to our newsletter, which is also called Infinite Scroll, where on Fridays, we round up the 5 biggest think pieces on the internet from that week. And exciting, we actually now have our full videos on Spotify. So obviously our podcast was on Spotify before, but just audio only. So now you can watch this podcast on Spotify or YouTube. Very exciting. And please review us on Spotify, just a little star review. I'm trying to get to 500 reviews on Spotify. Even if you don't listen on Spotify, please just leave us a little star review because I am headed towards that 500 review mark. Also, I actually have a question for you guys. Okay, so Chartable is the service. It is a Spotify service, is the service that we have been using for years to look at our international podcast reviews. Obviously, we only have access to Apple Podcasts in Australia, so we can only see the new reviews in Australia from our actual app. So we would use Chartable and they would send us the reviews internationally. No matter where you guys lived, if you left an Apple review, we would get it and then we could read it. And now, Chartable is closing at the beginning of December, and I don't know where to find our international Apple reviews. So if you guys know where we can find that, if you have knowledge of another platform that will do that for us, please let me know, preferably free. Okay, so I posted a question box on my Instagram, and I also asked you guys on YouTube to leave a comment or on Spotify. So this is an amalgamation. I'm going to try to get to all the questions, but we actually had quite a lot of questions. Okay, so I'm going to go in order of how I received them on Instagram, and then I'll get to the YouTube comments. So the first question that I have is, how do you stay focused and locked in day after day? This is a really hard question to answer because I think this year, my schedule has quadrupled in terms of workload and just expectations. And so I don't really have any other choice. However, some things that have helped me a lot when Jordy first left the business and I was kind of doing rounds of mentor meetings and just trying to figure out the direction of how I would take this by myself now. I met with this man who, scary. But he's very experienced and his whole thing is to help newer or independent media brands really scale and succeed. And he was so helpful in everything that, all the advice that he gave me. And one of the most tangible things that I took away from that meeting was, it was so minor, compared to all the other stuff we talked about, but it was something that now I've implemented day to day, is he was okay, as a solo founder, you are going to be stretched so thin. And I can't even stress how right he was. I really thought he was over exaggerating. And I was okay, I've been doing this business now for 4 years. I know what's up. It'll be fine. No, I had no idea what I was about to get myself into. So he was you are going to need to time block, get rid of your to-do list, get rid of your Notion. This is all about time blocking. Every single second of your day for this 7 days a week needs to be time blocked. And he was so right. I would be nowhere without time blocking. I block out every single social thing I do. I time block every single weekend. I mean, I always have to work on the weekends. So, I time block. Okay, so I go to the gym at 7 a.m. on a Saturday, and then I literally will time block an hour for my glam, an hour for the bus or my commute if I'm driving, literally 15 minutes to go get my coffee. I time block it like that, and it is so helpful. So that is one of the biggest things. And I'm a Sagittarius. Like, I don't want to have such a strict routine. I really thrive in rituals, like having rituals, but I do not like a routine. But it is so necessary for like this stage of my business, this stage of my life. So that's probably my one biggest thing that I do. And I time block everything, including downtime, like including watching Housewives. It's so important to me. And the other thing that like I said, I don't really have a choice, but the other thing that I kind of like carry with me and think about a lot, because I don't really move things to the next day. Like, I really get everything that I need to get done, usually every single day. And one of the things that I constantly think about is Andy Cohen did an interview recently. I think it was just last year. And somebody was asking him like the interviewer, obviously, the journalist was asking him like how he juggles his career and like his busy life. And now he has 2 kids. And he said, I literally just finish everything that I need to finish in a day, every single day before I go to sleep. Like, whether that takes me from the moment I wake up to the moment I fall asleep, like, I don't stop until I'm done. I don't take my rest period. I don't go to sleep. I don't stop until I have finished everything I need to get done that day. And I have literally just taken that on board all year. And that doesn't make for a very fun life a lot of the times, but that is just the reality of like the phase of the business and like the founder journey that I'm in right now. We were very much in the kind of like very juvenile startup phase for the first 4 years, and I didn't really realize that. And now at the beginning of the year, I was able to get some funding, and I've just had these kind of bigger moments that have made it so that my business has been able to scale much quicker than it ever was able to. And with more money comes more problems, a bigger team, just more going on, way more responsibility. And I really feel like I'm in like the true throes of startup life now in a way that I wasn't before. Okay, the next question is, what are your favorite podcasts to listen to? What are your favorite creators to follow? Okay, favorite podcast is Celebrity Memoir Book Club. Obviously. I actually don't really listen to any other pop culture podcasts. I will listen to Danny Pellegrino's Everything Iconic, his Housewives recaps, because he's so funny. But those are the only 2 pop culture podcasts I listen to. And I used to listen to so many. But I am in my founder startup era. I used to not be able to listen to those types of podcasts, like interviews with founders or like business advice podcasts, whatever. Like I would get like kind of triggered by them. I think I knew that I wasn't at the stage that I needed to be like truly scaling a startup, but I couldn't like accept that to myself. And so I just wanted to avoid any like education around it because it would make me feel like bad about myself. It would make me feel guilty. But now this year, it's like a non-negotiable. Like, I just kind of had to start like taking any resource that I could. And it's been so game-changing. So my favorite podcast now, I like certain interviews on Diary of a CEO. It definitely depends on the guest and the topic. I love We Regret to Inform You, the Rejection podcast. I think that's a Canadian podcast. It's by the Apostrophe Podcast Network, and they do like 30-minute deep dives into different, like, either it's founders, celebrities, TV shows, companies that went through like their journey and all of their rejection along the way. And it's really interesting. So I started listening to it for the business stuff, right? Like the podcast episodes about different companies. But now I listen to a lot of the TV show ones, like The Sopranos, Mad Men, Breaking Bad. And I think it's because it's actually more relevant to like my business, even though I didn't really think about it when I first started listening to this podcast. But like listening to how long it takes for like content to come alive, and for a business that's all about content and media to really like get off the ground, like those shows took like, I don't know, 15, 20 years to really get made. And those showrunners who created the shows, and obviously that was the peak of their career, like some of them, it was like 30 years into their careers. So those are like really inspiring stories. So I listened to that podcast to like feel good. And at the end, they always kind of give like wisdom. So they'll tell you the story. And then this like man who I think is the owner of the network, he'll come in and he'll do a little spiel on like, what you can learn from this episode, like what you can take away. And then he always ends it with never, ever give up. And that's just like what you need to hear sometimes when you're on this journey. Everybody needs to hear that sometimes. So I really like that I really like that podcast. I really like Acquired. The podcast, it's like Every Company Has a Story, and those are really long episodes. Some of them are like 3 hours long, and they just literally talk about the story of companies. I like Grace Beverley's Working Hard, Hardly Working, which is, again, interviews with different founders. I like Corporate Gossip, which is stories of businesses. So like I'm really in that era. I don't think that's so interesting probably for a lot of people, but like that's what I am consuming 9 times out of 10 when I'm listening to a podcast. And my favorite creators, so my actual number one favorite creator on YouTube is friend of the pod, Melanie Lorraine. So I'll put her down below, like a link to her YouTube channel. If you guys like vlogs, like I'm dead serious, I don't miss a single video. If you guys like vlogs, she vlogs every single week. She usually has a weekend vlog and a weekly vlog. And she is a social media lead, social media director at an agency. So it's like relevant to, my lifestyle and what I'm doing. But she's like a comfort creator for me now. She, I think, started watching me on YouTube and then we started following each other. And then I didn't even know that she vlogged. I don't even know. I guess I saw on her Instagram story something. So one day I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. And now I'm just like hooked. Like since that first vlog, like I just can't stop. I'm obsessed with her content. It's just like comforting and it's so real, right? Like she is just such like a real regular person, but she has a very cool job and she does influencing as well, but she's still so down to earth and I just love it. And now I just like love everyone like in her periphery. Like I love following her boss, Mitzi. Like I watch her vlogs on YouTube. Like I'm becoming like a Melanie World stan. Okay, the next question is how do we as elder Gen Z / millennials combat fat phobia online? That's a really hard one to answer for me because I feel like I have to do a lot of work myself, like internally, to battle how I feel about, like even wearing this top, I'm wearing a vest, like, looking at my arms and being like, I don't know if I should wear that on camera today. Like that is still constantly in my mind. And I'm sure it is for so many women, but especially millennial women growing up in the 2000s and all of that. But I would say the number one thing is trying to work on body neutrality. And that was a big point of conversation in my comments on the most recent episode that we did about like TikTok turning into Tumblr and body positivity and all of that. And there are a few great body neutral creators to follow. I'll put some links down below to different creators that you guys can follow for body neutrality. But I think in general, what's helped me is just noticing what other people are wearing and how they're presenting themselves, how they're holding themselves, like, and I'm talking about this like in real life, and realizing that like, I think everyone looks good and I'm not looking at someone and being like, oh my God, they shouldn't be wearing that. I'm not noticing that about people. So people aren't noticing that about you, like they might be looking at my vest and being like, I love that vest. They're not saying like, oh, she shouldn't have worn that with her arms, So I think that's a big part of it, but it is hard. Like it's so hard. And I'm definitely not the person to necessarily like help you with that answer because it's still something that I very much struggle with myself. But I think if we can just all work towards body neutrality, which is just seeing your body as, like a vessel, like something that is carrying you through life, something that is allowing you to move and exercise and being grateful for that. I guess that's a way that I practice body neutrality is like when I'm at the gym, I'll think like I'm so lucky that my body is able to do this. That my body is healthy enough and strong enough to be able to do this because not everybody has that. And so, yeah, I think practicing gratitude for your body, the body that you have, and body neutrality. But yes, I will put some creators down below because like I said, I'm probably not the best person for that. What is your favorite podcast episode? I got this question a couple times. You guys, I have literally no idea. I think Jordy and I had so many fun podcasts that we recorded where we just like literally had a good time. So I think any of those, like the ones where I was recording with her, were so much fun. I think now with the new kind of direction of the podcast, I really like Mini Scroll. I have the most fun doing Mini Scroll. I love just like chatting with you guys and sharing my opinions. But I don't really have like a favorite episode. Probably just the ones where it's like lighthearted. Like we do tackle some bigger topics here, which I think are important, and I won't stop that. But I just love when we can talk about like petty, stupid drama online. Okay, reading journey update. I don't have an update. Like my reading journey completely stopped this year with how crazy everything got. I have read, I think maybe 3 books in total this year, but I would say like the number one way that I'm like staying plugged into my reading journey is by listening to Melanie's podcast called Easy Reads, because even though I'm not reading those books, Like I like listening to them recapping books or like Celebrity Memoir Book Club as well. I guess I'm like kind of a reading podcast girly. I don't know. And I've been listening to audiobooks here and there, but they're all just like shoe dog, like business books, right? Like not anything, or like I also listened to one time, what is it? Like 10x is easier than 2x or whatever that like business book is. But yeah, so like I've listened to some of those, but again, I don't really have much of an update, unfortunately. Maybe for 2025. Okay, this one person keeps asking when we're gonna drop scroller merch. I'm dead. It's every single day in our YouTube comments. I don't know. Like Jordy and I talked about doing merch for a long time. I don't think that I am quite there in terms of like the business, like not audience. I do believe that like so many of you guys would buy it, but I just think I need to like get to a different place in the business where I can like focus on finding a proper manufacturer and like figuring that whole process out. Cause I have literally no idea how to do it. And I can't even like handle the mental capacity of figuring that out right now. So maybe 2025, we'll see. Why did your business partner leave? Okay, I got a couple questions about Jordy leaving. And honestly, it was genuinely exactly what she said in our last episode. Like, I don't want to speak for her, but I do want to address it because I don't want it to seem like I'm avoiding it because like we're friends. Like I'm seeing her this week. She's still one of my favorite people. Like I love her so much. Like I hope that we're always in each other's lives. Like there was genuinely no drama. It was just to the point where like her founder journey ended because like it's exactly what she said. Like the mental load, the physical toll that running a business and trying to build a business takes, the financial toll, like it's so intense. There's been so many periods over the last few years where we would start paying ourselves and then we'd have to stop, you know, or we would think that we were getting this like life-changing deal that was gonna, well, not life-changing for us, but like business-changing deal, and then it would get pulled. Like it is so up and down. And it just got to the point for her where she was like, I need to prioritize something else. Like I need to focus on another area of my life. And, you know, she's also a lot younger than me. So like I had several years of career experience to like kind of figure out like what I wanted to do, what I wanted to prioritize, like how I wanted to go about building my career. And she was in a much earlier stage of that than me. So that just makes sense. Like you just try things in your 20s, you know, and sometimes like they just don't work out. So, or like it doesn't have to just be your 20s, but you know what I mean? Like your 20s are for that time, for that like experiment and like growth and all of that. So that's just like real, like genuinely what she said in that episode, which was like the toll of being a founder and trying to build something when it feels like it's not necessarily like clicking yet. It's just a lot. So that's that. Okay, the next question is, are you making or losing money being your own business? This is a good question. So the business, like I make money, like I make a salary, but like I said, it has not always been that way. The business itself, it makes money. So like in terms of our revenue is higher than our costs. However, that can fluctuate throughout the year. So like our business is very fickle in the sense that like you might get paid more than half of your yearly budget all at once, like, you know, within like 2 months, and then you won't get any deals for several months, right? Okay, if you guys watched Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, they were actually talking about that because it's a similar industry. Like I'm not an influencer, like I'm not doing like influencery stuff, but like brand budgets, like that's how we also function because we work off advertising. And so that's kind of, you know, it's similar to what they were saying where they're like, we can make all of our money at Christmas time and then we won't make any money for like 3 months. So it's kind of like that. But yes, the business itself actually like makes more money than it spends. However, like I said, we got funding at the beginning of the year. So that is accruing some debt. So it kind of just is just like how businesses work. Like I'm still really trying to get a strong handle on the cash flow. It's a journey for me because I am not a math girl, but in general, yes, the business makes money, but we also owe money, if that makes sense. What is your favorite/least favorite part about recording the podcast? Oh my God. I don't think I realized how much time doing a daily podcast would be. I was a bit like Delulu, even though I had 4 years of podcasting experience under my belt. I didn't realize how, I think, how taxing that would be. Like, I'm actually genuinely exhausted by the end of the week because I am performing on camera every single day, 5 days a week. I find that difficult, but I also find it really rewarding. Like, I find mini scroll very rewarding. That is my favorite part of recording, is like just talking with you guys and hearing your feedback in the comments and showing up for you guys every single day. Like, I love being able to do that. My least favorite part, I really have a hard time with like the deep dives. I really do. Not just prepping them, they're so much work. And Annabelle helps me. Like, some of them, she's almost completely done herself. She helps me so much with that. I find the deep dives really difficult to record. I don't know. I got a teleprompter and it's helped, but I don't know what it is. Like, there is just something about reading a teleprompter and just trying to present like for 30 solid minutes. I find that so challenging. I find it vocally challenging. I find it energetically challenging. I have this like mental block about it where I'm like, oh, the deep dive. Oh my God, this is going to be like so much work. This is going to be so hard. And then I finish it. I'm like, okay, that was actually fine. But yeah, I need to like get into a better headspace with the deep dives. That's for sure. Any chance of coming back / relaunching on YouTube? Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know, I had a YouTube channel and I was like posting all the time. And that's kind of how I grew a bit of a following. But I was working in media like halfway through my YouTube journey. So I started YouTube, I should give you some context, when I moved to Australia. So I moved to Australia and I like documented that experience on YouTube. And then I started vlogging and making a lot of like moving to Australia content and stuff. But I was also just like vlogging a lot and whatever. And then I got a job that I just loved so much. Like, it was in media. I was a beauty and entertainment writer. I mean, that job it opened my world to being able to do this, like to being able to do Centennial. I interviewed Kim Kardashian on the phone in that job. Like, it was a fucking sick job. I loved it. And doing that job, I was like, okay, actually, like, I don't really want to be like a YouTuber. I'm realizing kind of like I want to be in media. Like, I want to be truly like reporting and journalism and like doing all that stuff. So I stopped posting on YouTube. And then about a year and a half ago, maybe, I privated all my videos. And that was just because, honestly, so many of those, it makes me cringe looking back. Like, I can't watch all the videos. And a lot of them I don't necessarily stand by now. Like, I did a lot of like what I eat in a day. Like, I was really on like a fitness journey for a bit, which I feel like they're a bit toxic. There's a lot of videos that I made about like first impressions of Australia and stuff, which I don't stand by now because I was just like really young and stupid, so I just took them all down. I don't know. I might, like, I've considered it over the last 2 years. Like, do I start vlogging again and stuff? Right now, I just like genuinely don't have the time, but I would never say never. We'll put it that way. How and why did you move to Australia from Canada? I actually got this question a few times. So I finished university and then I was working for like 18 months, and the company that I was working at the time, they got bought out by a US company. And then a bunch of us lost our jobs, like almost half the company lost their jobs. And so I had a severance package. I had no job. I was living in Ottawa at the time because my boyfriend, my like university boyfriend, he was from Ottawa and he got a job there after university. So we moved there together, and I didn't really like Ottawa. Like, it was fine. And I had a couple friends there, but it was like not my place. And I knew I wasn't going to stay there. So him and I had broken up, but like I'd stay there for my job because I really liked my job. And then when I was, laid off, I was like, okay, well, like, I don't know what to do. I had met some Australians, including my now husband. They came to Canada to do some like training because we had an Australian office at the company that I was working at. And so I would talk to my husband like all the time, and I like kind of liked him and stuff, but obviously he lived like so far away. I knew a bunch of friends that had done their working holiday visas in Australia after university. I was like, I could move back to Toronto. Like, I'm not going to move back in with my parents. Like, I left home to go to university at 17, and it was just never in my journey to move back home. Like, I was just not like once I was gone, I'm a Sagittarius. Once I was gone, I was gone. I was like, I'm not going backwards. Like, I'm not moving back in with my parents. That's just like was something that I was very passionate about. So I was like, I'm not going to move back in with my parents. I could go to Toronto, but then that's like where I grew up. But all of my friends are already living in apartments all together and stuff. So like I would have to figure out how to either live alone, which would be so expensive, or like live with flatmates. And I was just kind of like not vibing that. Like, I was just like down for more adventure. Again, Sagittarius. So I decided to apply for my working holiday visa. I got the visa. And then 8 years later, I am still here. What made you want to start the Infinite Scroll business? Okay, so the business is actually called Centennial World. It's called Centennial because Centennial is another way to say Gen Z, which I feel like is not that well known. But Infinite Scroll is obviously like the podcast. It's like our main content arm now for the business, but we do a lot of different things. Obviously, we're a media brand. And like I said, the podcast is kind of the main hub of that, and our TikTok. Those are like the two main platforms, our newsletter as well. And then we have a consulting arm as well where we help brands figure out how to reach Gen Z. So we started this business in December 2019. I just was working in media at the time. Like I said, I was like a beauty and entertainment journalist, and I would pitch stories all the time about all of my favorite creators. Like I've just always been so passionate about like YouTube and what's happening online and pop culture. And I just was watching drama channels start to really explode. And I would pitch stories about like Jeffree Star's palette launch or like Jaclyn Hill's lipstick gate, like whatever was happening online in the beauty space, because I was writing about beauty content. And I'd be like, we need to cover this. And at the time, like it just wasn't mainstream enough. And, this was like 2018, 2019. And my editors being like, we don't cover that. That's like not mainstream enough. And I was watching these drama channels get millions of views per video. I was watching all these commentary channels pop up to talk about what was happening in the beauty industry, but like online beauty. And I was like, this is the direction of media. Like this has to be the direction of mainstream media. Like we need to start covering what is happening in the online space. And at the time, like there were so few publications, especially in Australia, like no one was doing it. Even worldwide, people were not covering the industry from this perspective. And I just knew there was like a missed opportunity. And because I was so passionate about this space, I was like, we need a publication that is like for Gen Z, like for young people, that is all about internet culture, social media trends, like what is happening online, treating creators like celebrities, because that's really what they are at this point. So that was kind of like the inspiration behind Centennial and Infinite Scroll. And I literally, again, I don't know how many times I'm going to say I'm a Sagittarius, but I'm a risk taker because I'm a Sagittarius. And I was like, I need to do this. And I got really like fucking into it and so passionate about it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I approached Jordy and I was like, do you want to do this with me? We worked together. So that's how I knew her. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I quit my job and we launched 6 weeks later in December 2019. Thoughts on Cody Ko's continued silence? Oh my God. I think his hands are tied. I think he can't address things unless it's so carefully, because he will risk admitting to sleeping with a minor, which I assume is a crime in at least most states. So I think he can't have that risk, and there's so many sponsors riding on this. So yeah, I think there's just too much riding on his public perception, and if he addresses it in not the exactly right way, then it's a bigger risk. I think that's why he's staying silent. How did you meet your partner? Why did you move from Canada to Australia? So I kind of already answered that, but yes, I met Sean through work. We met because we were both working for this Canadian tech company. He was working in the Sydney office. I was working in the Ottawa office. And then, yeah, like I said, a bunch of us got made redundant. We got laid off and I had a severance package. So I did my working holiday here, and like we were talking all the time anyways, but like he was literally one of the people that I knew here. And yeah, we basically just started dating right away because we were talking all the time. Do you have any ghost stories? I wish so badly that I had a story, like a ghost story. I wish that I was like had spiritual encounters or anything like that, but I don't. And I wish I did. I love like scary movies. I love spooky shit. Like I think the problem is I don't know if I believe in ghosts. Like I don't know if I believe in all of that. So that's probably why I haven't had any experiences, but I wish, but I haven't. When did you first realize you had a passion for internet culture? So I've always just been like obsessed with pop culture and celebrity culture my whole life. Like my walls at home growing up were covered in posters of celebrities. Like I have just always been so into celebrity culture. I've always paid attention to it so much closer than anyone else that I knew. And I got into internet culture when I got into YouTube. So I started making YouTube videos, obviously. My actual first like introduction to YouTube, watching it consistently, was ASMR. and Trisha Paytas. And then I started making my own videos, so I got more entrenched in YouTube. And so I started watching the beauty community a lot because I love makeup. I've also always loved like makeup and beauty. Then when drama channels came out, I kind of already said this, but like when drama and commentary channels came out, like I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is my dream scenario. Like there's so many things that were happening in these videos, in these communities that I had no one to talk to about it. And, nobody obviously was like reporting on it like Entertainment Tonight or anything. So I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for, is these videos, like this dissection of what's happening, like whatever. And so that's kind of my first introduction into like internet culture as a whole, was like getting really into drama channels. What has been your favorite deep dive so far? I kind of already answered that. Like, I really don't know. I also feel like they're so different from... Actually, you know what? I'm going to say my favorite deep dive was the Gwen Gwiz episode. I don't necessarily think we handled it the best. And it was before we like fully separated the episodes from like viral culture, like recaps, to like the deep dive. So it is like an annoying episode to listen to because we don't start till like an hour in. That was like original reporting. Like that was not, like we did not find that information anywhere else. Like that took weeks of like putting that together. It felt like one of the most in-depth pieces of reporting that we had done thus far. And that was a deep dive with Jordy. So yes, I think that's probably my favorite one. But again, I don't think we necessarily handled it the best. I think we were like a little bit judgmental, and I just kind of look back on it and I'm like, that was maybe just like not the best way to go about it, but I still stand behind the work, if that makes sense. What do companies need to know when marketing to Gen Z? Girl, we get paid for that. I mean, if you guys listen to this podcast, you probably already know all this stuff. But if I was going to give like one blanket kind of rule, I would say we need to stop looking at what is happening offline as like quote unquote real life to them, or just like any of us, honestly, but especially younger people who like grew up with phones, with social media. Internet culture is culture at this point. They are one and the same for younger generations. There is no logging off. Like there is no such thing as what happens online doesn't permeate into their real lives. They are one and the same. Their lives are so blended. So I would say considering that in every marketing effort that you do. And as a result, my number one piece of advice, like blanket advice, again, like we literally do like private personal consulting, one-on-one consulting for different brands. So it all depends on your brand, your team, all of that. But I would say as a blanket rule, you need to have someone or people who are chronically online on your team. Because, like I said, internet culture is culture for Gen Z and Gen Alpha and any generation coming up. There is no differentiation for them. So you need to have people who fully understand what is happening online, the culture online, how online is impacting young people, what they're doing online, what they're seeing online, what they're experiencing online, because that is their reality. It's the same thing as doing market research on a generation and understanding, their habits and behaviors. You need to have somebody who is on your team that is entrenched in the online world. And if you don't have that, then you need to hire me. What was your career journey to end up where you are now? I'm always so fascinated to hear what people did before starting their own business. And I think somebody else here asked if I had any other jobs before Centennial, and I definitely did. So my career journey, I guess I'm just gonna go way back. I was a lifeguard and a swim instructor when I was a teenager, and that took me through university. And then in the last year or two of university, I started working as like a promo girl. I would be like a vitamin water girl at a festival, or like a Bud Light girl at a bar handing out free beers, like that kind of stuff. And I loved it. And I loved the company that I was working for. It was like an experiential marketing company. And so when I graduated university, I wanted to stay with that company. They didn't have any other roles except for recruiting promo girls in the region that I was living in. So I went to university in Halifax. I went to Dalhousie. And so I wasn't going to stay in Halifax after I graduated, but I did for a year because I just really wanted to stay with that company. And again, I didn't really want to recruit, but I wanted to stay with that company. I knew that working for that company was something that I wanted to see out. So I was like, okay, I'll take that job. So I was recruiting promo models basically. And that was really fun. It was a work from home job. And then, like I said, my boyfriend got a job back in Ottawa in Ontario. So we moved there. And that's when I got a job in tech. Because I had recruiting experience, I got a recruitment job at a tech company. So I was the token millennial on the team. And they did hire me to help like find the younger talent, like the younger sales team and whatever. So I did that for a year and I really liked it. Like I didn't necessarily like recruiting, but I really liked my team. I liked the company, whatever. And the money was good. Like I worked in tech. And then I got made redundant, like I got laid off. So that's when I moved to Australia. Because I had a couple of years of recruitment experience, that was so much to my benefit when I moved here because, I actually got a job before I moved here, which I feel like is completely unheard of now. I don't even know. I felt like that was just so lucky, but I got a job at a recruitment agency. If you guys have ever worked agency recruitment, you know how traumatic it is. It is like the most horrific experience, but it was a job. They sponsored me. It was what it was. It served its purpose. And I made so many of my friends through it because so many recruitment agencies, at least at that point, it was 8 years ago, like I said, but it was, all expats, like British expats, Canadian expats, all of that. So it was good because I met so many expats. I made so many friends through that job. But again, I was like, okay, this is like my third year recruiting. I really don't want to be in recruitment. I really don't want this to be what ends up happening where I just end up like falling into this career. And I've always thought like that, which I think is important in your 20s. Like you don't have to be working in your dream job, your dream industry, like anything like that. But I think having the understanding that like, okay, if I don't really love this or like this is not really where I saw my life going, like I need to start thinking like, how am I going to get out of it? Because you don't want to end up getting stuck. So I started thinking like that. And I'd always had, sorry, I forgot to say this, but I'd always had a blog because I like have always loved writing. So I had a blog like straight out of university. I started writing a blog and I kept that up for the whole time. And then I started a YouTube channel, obviously. So what ended up happening was the recruitment agency that I was at, the government changed like all these visa rules overnight. If you guys were like in the Australian expat visa community 8 years ago, you might remember this, but it was literally like we all woke up and like suddenly half the jobs were like right off the visa list and all the pending applications were canceled. Like it was like a huge thing. And so I was like, fuck, I'm going to need to find a solution here. So I knew, okay, well, I'd been dating Sean now for like a year. I knew we were going to do partner visa. So I moved in with him and that kind of bought me some time to figure out because it takes a long time to qualify for partner visa. So I moved in with him and I was on this like bridging visa where I didn't really have a lot of working rights. Like I don't think I couldn't work full time. I can't remember how many hours I could work. But anyways, so that really limited my options. But it gave me an opportunity to have a bit of like a career break, like a step back, not like a break, but like a step back. I was working like odd jobs. Like I was literally working as a promo girl. And guys, I was like 26 maybe. I feel like there's so much pressure that young people put on themselves. And I remember being like 25, 26, going to the mall to hand out flyers, like feeling like the biggest failure of all time, feeling like I had ruined my life, moving here and trying to switch careers and being on this visa where I couldn't work full time and stuff. But like you're so young in your 20s, like it all works out. You need to try different things. And to like make transitions, there needs to be friction. You're going to take steps back. Like it's going to be uncomfortable. So if you're feeling that way, just know like I have been there and it's normal. But yes, so I was working like whatever random odd like promo gigs and things like that I could get because I couldn't get a full-time job. And then at that same time, I started really working on my blog and my YouTube. So then when I finally had full working rights, I considered just like trying to really do YouTube full-time. Like I'd started making some money and I had, I don't know, maybe like 25,000 subscribers, like definitely not enough to be a full-time YouTuber. But I was like, maybe if I could just like keep doing what I'm doing, working like odd gig jobs here and there while building my YouTube, I'll get to a point where it's like full-time income. But I really wanted to move and we were living in this apartment that Sean, for the most part was paying most of the rent because my income was like so little. And I was like, no, like I need to live somewhere nicer. I need to live somewhere bigger. Like I need to have brightness and like, the apartment we were living in, it was totally fine, but it was very dark and it was like genuinely impacting my mental health. So I started looking for jobs that would be flexible in media. Like I wanted it to be in media. I knew that would allow me to still do like YouTube and blogging. And I found this job as a community manager, which again is like entry level at one of the biggest publishers in Australia, working for, I think it was like just one or two websites at that point. And so I was doing community management, which is just like interacting with readers and community members and whatever. And I was doing YouTube on the side. but it was kind of like 50-50. And that was like the best. Like I actually loved that period of my life. It was so fun. And then I was offered a full-time writing job off the back of that at the same publication. And I just loved it. So I was like, okay, yes, I have to say yes. And Sean actually like didn't want me to say yes. He was like, your dream is to be doing like your own thing. Like, I don't think you should take a full-time job. Like, you've been building your YouTube, you've been building your blog. But I was like, no, like something doesn't feel right about me trying to be like an influencer, if that makes sense. Like making content, like I want to make content, but I don't want to make it about myself. So yes, I basically decided I was going to take that full-time job. Again, had the best time, but that's the job where I started, like I was writing. So I was a journalist, a beauty and entertainment journalist. And that's where I started like ideating on Centennial. That's where I met Jordy. And then that's the job that I quit to do Centennial. How did you find your niche? What made you start Centennial World? I kind of explained, well, I did explain what made me start Centennial World. And the niche, again, it was literally just knowing that there was a gap for like internet culture reporting. I know so many of you guys have found this podcast this year, but like I said, we started in 2019. So, we started the podcast in 2020, but we only started filming it at the beginning of last year. So that's kind of why the growth, like we didn't prioritize the podcast growth at all. Like we really prioritized the publication. And the niche actually started as beauty. So we were Centennial Beauty for like several years, and we almost exclusively reported on the beauty community. But obviously, as TikTok got bigger and bigger and bigger, the concept of internet culture and who was the most famous people on the internet and like the creators to follow and to talk about and stuff, like that all changed so quickly. So we rebranded because we were covering topics that literally made no sense, had nothing to do with beauty. We would talk about like FaZe Clan and gaming, and we would still be Centennial Beauty, and advertisers and people would just be like, what? So we rebranded to Centennial World last year. How did you get into podcasting? So we, like I said, started as a media publication, like primarily like a .com, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And we just knew to be competitive in this new era of media, we had to have a podcast. And so many publishers in Australia at that time, and kind of still, but especially at that time, did not have a podcast arm. And we just thought that was crazy. So we knew we would have to have a podcast. So we launched our publication, like our brand, December 2019. And then we started our podcast February 2020. An ominous time. How are you doing? Really? That is so sweet. Thank you so much for asking. Actually, in this moment, I am doing well. This year has been the hardest year of my whole life, like hands down. It's been an absolute roller coaster, the things that I've had to deal with and make it through. But I can say it feels like, knock on wood, but it feels like I'm coming out the other side. I didn't realize how badly I needed Europe. Like going on that Europe trip with all my friends, having 2 weeks of like just checking out, basically. I was still like checking my emails and stuff, but like you kind of have to when you're the business owner, you know? But I was like not working, obviously. It was the break I needed, and I did not realize that until probably this past week, where I've been like, holy shit. Like I feel so much calmer. I feel like my nervous system had a chance to like kind of come back down to earth and settle. I feel so much more like secure and stable. And I feel like my perspective this year, even though this year has been so hard, like it changed my perspective on so much. And having that distance from the business, going away for 2 weeks, gave me that renewed perspective. Something that really helped renew my perspective was one of those like businessy podcasts that I was listening to. And I was listening to some founder talk about, you know, the startup grind and why he feels like he is an early stage founder as opposed to kind of like a middle or late stage founder where it's more like business administration. And I feel the same way for sure. But he was saying like, one of the best things, the most exciting things about running a startup is that you have to fall in love with the problem solving. It's all about getting thrown problems and figuring your way out of it. And that's like the high that you get. Like that's the rush. And I had never considered or like looked at running a startup that way. Like I have had so many problems this year, like problems that I think are bigger than any problems I've literally ever had in my life, like genuinely through the business. And I would receive these problems and I would be like, what the actual fuck? I would make it out, you know, like we moved through it, we figured it out, but I was seeing them almost as like failures, right? Like I was seeing like, oh my God, we keep having all these problems because like of my incompetency, because I am bad at this, because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And then having that one founder say that, I was like, oh my God, that's just like what I needed to hear. Like, I just needed to hear that, like, this is normal and you have to fall in love with the problem solving because it is going to be nonstop problems. And that really renewed my perspective. And I feel like I came out of my trip with like fresh eyes. Like, I do feel much better. So yeah, right now I am doing pretty well. And something else that made me feel better is I talked to my best friend about everything all the time. Like, every day we're voice noting about like our own personal crises, whatever. And, you know, the business and like everything. I'm always telling her about everything. And she was like, you will make it through and like this will be fine because your biggest superpower is your tenacity, your resilience, your resourcefulness. And those are the things that you need to be a good early stage founder. She was like, you are like whack-a-mole. Like, the universe keeps like popping up with problems and you're just like whacking it back down. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. That's like the visual that I needed. But it's so true. Like, I have learned that like this is the journey. And if I can get through the shit that I've been through this year, like, I genuinely can like make it through. And it's given me a renewed sense of competency. Because I think when you're running a business and you're in those early stages, everything feels new, everything feels stressful, like, especially like I'd never run a business before. So, I mean, I didn't go to university for business. Like, I just did not know what I was doing. And I think you kind of always feel like a fish out of water. So you start to question yourself. It really is like it takes a hit to your self-confidence. I didn't realize how much I had felt that over the last like 4.5 years until now, coming into this last month. I have a sense of confidence in my competency back. Because before starting the business, like, you know, I knew what I was good at. I knew what I wasn't. I knew I was super competent in certain areas. And I feel like I had lost all of that. So I feel like I'm getting a bit of that back and I am doing pretty well. How do you handle criticism, and has your ability to cope with any hate you get online changed as you've grown more comfortable in your role? So I want to answer that question after I just told you guys that I'm feeling better, because yes, like, getting hate online, it was okay when I had Jordy. Like, having someone else that you're doing that with, it's like I would be down and she would be lifting me up and vice versa, right? So like, it was much easier to handle any hate that we got. Now I found this year, like, I found it to be incredibly difficult. I found the first probably 6 to 7 months of the year, any criticism that I got online, like, I would try and absorb it because I also want to stay like learning and open-minded. Like, I never want to, you know, receive a comment and think like, oh, you just don't fucking know. Like, unless it's like a really stupid comment. But if it's like genuinely feedback, like, I want to be receptive to that. But I found it very difficult because I was in such a bad headspace. I was navigating this all alone now. And, you know, like I said, I was just going through so much in the business. Like, it was like genuinely a traumatic time. Like, one day when I write a book about this, you guys will read it if you have been on this journey for this last year, and you'll be like, how the fuck did all of that happen? Well, she was like showing up for mini scroll every day. Like, it's been a fucking insane year. Yes, I was not handling it well, and I felt like I was just putting one foot in front of the other every single day for the last probably like 10 months. Like, I literally felt like I was just dragging my feet. Like, I was depressed, I was anxious. I would get a comment and it would just send my nervous system into overdrive, and I would have a panic attack about it for like a day. And, you know, having my best friend that I could just like voice note to, and obviously like Sean, my husband and stuff, but like just having the women around me who were so supportive, like, I can't even tell you how that just like helped pull me out of it. I remember one of the worst things I was going through this year, and oh my God, I feel like I'm gonna cry. And my best friend was like, we're gonna get you out of this. Like, we're gonna figure it out together. And that's just like what I needed. So just having that community of women around me was so helpful. Like, obviously I had a great time in Europe, but I really didn't realize it was like that transformative, like, you know, but just having that distance, like those 2 weeks, I came back and I feel so much more rejuvenated and so much stronger. And now I have such a clear perspective. I'm like, the shit that people are saying online, if they're saying anything hurtful or mean or whatever, I'm like, I have been through literal hell this year. Like, this does not faze me. I'm sure it will go up and down. I'm sure that there will be periods moving forward, especially as this podcast grows, you know, a wider audience where I'm going to be unwell again. But yes, my ability to cope in this current moment is much better than it was because I have been through like real problems this past year. Okay, and the last question is, hi Lauren, hope you're doing well. My question is, in your experience, how can you tell a true friend from a fake friend? This is a hard one because I think things change as you get older. I think my definition of a true friend would have been different in my 20s than it is now. And I have tried to make a very conscious effort in the last probably like 2 to 3 years to be a better friend to the people that I want in my life, but also who like are true friends to me. So part of it is like you have to realize there's different friends for different things. And not all of your friends are going to be like really supportive and caring and, show up for you when you need them. But that's okay because they can be other things for you. Like they can be really fun. They can invite you to big parties. They can be whatever. Like they can be different. There's different types of friends for different things. So that's part of it. But I think if you're looking for that like deeper connection, something that one of my best friends has really taught me, not like openly, but just like how she interacts with me has taught me this, is I did not grow up with a group of friends in high school or university with kind of the type of friends where we would just check in on each other. We'd be like, hey, how are you doing? Just never had that experience. And so that was not part of how I showed friendship, how I expressed friendship, like whatever. That was just not part of my friendship journey or experience. And then I made a really close friend here, and she is that kind of person. I realized how much that's deepened our connection. I realized that that keeps our relationship moving forward and getting deeper. And in no matter like where we are in the world, even if we're not living in the same city, like, that keeps us connected. And so that like having her in my life has taught me that like part of being a really good friend, and everyone's going to express quote unquote good friendship differently, obviously. But for me, like as you get older, part of being a really good friend is prioritizing like checking in and seeing how people are doing and just being there to listen. And that has changed a lot of how I interact with different friendships and how I prioritize different friendships, how I talk to my friends, that kind of stuff. I don't know if that was a good answer. I feel like I could have taken the full 2 hours to answer that. I hope that gave you, a little tidbit to take with you. Anyways, guys, I feel like this has probably been the longest podcast episode I've ever recorded. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for all the questions. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question, and there were a lot of like double ups, but I so appreciate you guys, listening every week and taking the time to ask me these questions and learn a little bit about, Centennial and Infinite Scroll and me and the journey. I love you guys. Thank you for bearing with me in this busy time, but I am looking forward to being back in your ears next week with Mini Scroll and then a deep dive on the Friday after that. All right, guys. Thank you. I love you guys. I'll talk to you next week. Bye.